Hey, what's happening, everyone? It is I, the man, the myth, the mustache, Tim here, with a brand new video for you. Welcome to part 8 of What If Midoriya Was an All-for-One fan. Yes, this intro is a little shorter than usual, but this is an exciting episode. So please, sit back and relax, or don't sit back and relax. Either way, you're in for a ride. So let's get the story going, shall we? The stadium rang out with cheering and chanting. Midoriya cared not for the civilians or the media. No. The heroes are what he paid attention to. After all, why scan quirks from students when he can scan the pros? Midoriya's mind raced through his options, smiling at several of them. Midoriya's HUD listed off his newly compiled quirks: Erasure, Clone, Somnambulist, Homing, and Iron Claws. Hello, and welcome to this year's UA Sports Festival, and we have one heck of a show for you lined up today. This year, we'll be watching our fresh-faced first years go at it to get to the top 3 spots. Joining me in the commentary booth is my buddy old pal, Eraserhead. Acting as our masters of ceremonies is Midnight and G-Force. Been too long, hasn't it, folks? Well, she's back from retirement and raising a family single-handedly. Never really stopped being a hero, am I right, parents? Now let's get this party started! Aizawa sighed as he chugged down some coffee. He was gonna need it if this is what he was gonna be sitting beside all day. Meanwhile, Mike continued screaming into the microphone, hyping up the crowds. Thank you, President Mike, for that strong introduction. Could our top scorer in the entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya, please step up to the stage and give us a little speech to kick things off? Midoriya walked towards Midnight and Inko. He took the microphone from Midnight and climbed up to the stage, looking at the ground as he held the microphone. He waited until everyone fell silent before finally speaking. His voice changer gave him a more commanding presence, gaining the attention of every pro there. He raised his head to stare straight at the camera.
Heroes, students, citizens, children, vigilantes, and villains. Yes, that's right. I know you're watching, listening, or hiding amongst these good people here today. I have a speech for you and a warning. A new age is coming. It's coming faster than you realize, and its beginning is standing before you now. You can choose to change when this new era comes. You can try to fight against it, or you can run and hide. No matter what you choose, we will always prevail.
Silence rested over the crowd as Midoriya spoke, using his quirk to float from the ground and over the various students, gesturing toward his squadron in the front, given the facade he was gesturing to the entire student body when he referred to the beginning of a new age. The crowd erupted into cheers, as did many students, followed by the applause of many heroes, all believing that the message and warning was aimed towards villains and vigilantes. A man sat at a desk, going over notes wearing a pair of white gloves and a beaked mask, only paying attention to the TV when he heard the word villains mentioned in Midoriya's speech. He watched and listened, stopping his work for the first time in a while to just watch this sports festival unfold. That message came from the mouth of someone who was no hero. Elsewhere, a group of figures in finely tailored suits and dresses listened to this speech, watching with intrigue. The man who sat at the center of the group listened to what sounded like a natural-born leader, and as Midoriya spoke the line, "We will always prevail," the man pressed his thumb and forefinger against his head in the shape of an L with a grin. A man in a red bandana, covering most of his face, armed head to toe in knives and swords, listened to Midoriya's little speech over a radio, smiling a little at these words. It seems someone possibly shared his intent to change society. The man soon shut off the radio and looked down from his rooftop vantage point, getting ready to descend upon his next prey. The League of Villains watched and listened closely, all knowing Midoriya long enough to know that he had phrased that speech perfectly to make both heroes and villains believe the warning was aimed towards their enemies and not themselves. It amused All for One to no end that people were cheering their approaching downfall. Midoriya handed the microphone back to Midnight and nodded as President Mike began shouting over the microphone again. Oh, that speech gave me chills! I'd hate to annoy him on a bad day. Guess that's why he's currently the top student in the hero courses, huh? Must really eat you up seeing as he's being taught by Vlad and not you, huh, Eraserhead? You already annoy me every day, Midoriya hissed internally at the loud and obnoxious blonde with more vocal cords than brain cells. Midoriya waited, paying attention only when demanded of him, given he found this entire event to be a huge waste of time and money. The first event was announced as an obstacle course, and as various murmurs about Midoriya being able to fly spread across the audience, he walked towards Midnight and asked her to kindly announce to the crowds that Midoriya would only be using his telekinetic flight capabilities during the final event. An announcement that satisfied most of the disgruntled audience. Others were disappointed that they wouldn't get to see some aerial maneuvers until the final event. Everyone gathered at the starting point, waiting for the buzzer to sound, signaling for them to begin. Everyone prepared their various quirks, ready to give their all. As the buzzer sounded, everyone felt their quirks shut down, all glancing behind them to see two Midoriyas, one using his claw pack to emit a red glow, likely mimicking Aizawa's erasure quirk. The second tunneled beneath the ground as claws ripped through the earth, letting Midoriya emerge from the other side. Soon, the clone was dismissed, leaving a Midoriya who had just tunneled under the crowd of competitors. Mike and Aizawa gave commentary on Midoriya's support gear, stating it had been specially designed to copy 5 quirks, and judging from his actions, they deduced he had clone from Ectoplasm, Erasure from Aizawa, and Iron Claws from Power Loader. Running ahead of the pack, Midoriya reached the first obstacle, Mountain Assault. Mike screamed its name as robots from the entrance exam began poking out from various cracks in the mountain climb. And Midoriya has reached our first obstacle, leaving everybody in the dust straight out of the gate with that erasure move using a clone. Here's a lesson, folks. Don't rely on your quirk too much. You never know when you might have to fight without it. Now back to the action. You better watch out for these bots defending the mountain base. They pack a lot more punch on the entrance exam variants. Guess Nezu must really want to push this year's students, huh? Midoriya paid little attention to the commentary. All he needed to hear was that these things were stronger than normal. All the more reason to not destroy them and leave them for the others to get past. Midoriya pushed forward using his telekinesis, plus Snipe's homing quirk to throw small rocks at incoming projectiles, such as the net missiles or stun bullets. Looking back, Midoriya could see Todoroki and Bakugo gaining, and immediately let a claw spin around to face them with a red glow, rendering them quirkless. He chuckled watching Bakugo fall from the air onto his face, and Todoroki create a small shard of ice instead of a massive iceberg. Thanks to his new gear, Mineta was giving the other competitors a real run for their money now. God, if this is what the league could do for him, he was all in, no questions anymore. The small villain laughed as he used his new boots and gloves to scale the mountain, using various sticky balls he'd stuck together on a sheet of rock as a shield from the incoming projectiles. Kamakiri struggled to get past the confined entryway, but once out, he climbed the rock face, avoiding being in the red glow of the erasure quirk coming from Midoriya. Kamakiri began slicing through various bots and turrets. Hagakure was nowhere to be seen, but the fact bots and turrets were exploding for no particular reason was indication enough that she was there. Midoriya reached the top of the mountain and looked over the next obstacle. It was a forest? While running straight into the forest, Midoriya heard Aizawa announcing the obstacle, which set off a few alarm bells. As he ran into the wooded area, Monoma and Jiro, who had decided to call a truce if they wanted a good shot at crossing the finish line and getting into the next round, had torn past the mountain thanks to their combined efforts, and Midoriya no longer erasing people's quirks. Both watched Midoriya enter the forest and give chase with Todoroki just behind them and Bakugo ahead of them, tailing Midoriya. Before we get back into the video, I want to talk about our new channel, Celestia. The channel dedicated to all things Dungeons & Dragons. Currently, we have a series breaking down the different spells in D&D, and soon we'll be starting some new series as well. So if you're a fan of D&D or have an interest in learning about it, check it out! Additionally, if there is something you've always wanted to see get made into a video, head over there and leave a comment mentioning it. Alright, this obstacle is a tricky one and will really test what our students can do. This artificial forest was designed to be as disorienting as possible and is filled to the brim with traps of all kinds. After all, when villains make their lairs in secluded and isolated locations, such as this, they often resort to such guerrilla warfare tactics to keep heroes at bay. There, I read it. Aizawa groaned as he wanted nothing to do with this, but apparently it was his turn this year. Hearing the word traps, instantly Midoriya started shifting through his various eyesight modes, noticing a massive pitfall trap in front of him. Then he heard the sound of explosions behind him. Deku! How dare you erase my quirk! I'm gonna make you pay! Midoriya sidestepped the screaming bomb, letting Bakugo just jump into the pitfall trap. The green-haired teen laughed, continuing on his merry way using his helmet's compass and the main HUD, and various eyes to navigate his way through the mind-bending forest without triggering the traps he could detect. Sure, he came out with a few scratches, but Midoriya could walk it off, or he guessed he could run it off in this case. Midoriya approached the next obstacle. It appeared to be a mock skyscraper with approximately 20 floors. Through the windows, Midoriya could see figures moving around inside. Humanoid figures, for that matter. So it wasn't robots Midoriya would be up against if he went in there. As if to answer his question, the loud booming voice of President Mike fired over the audio systems again, announcing and commenting on people's progress. Midoriya decided to pay attention to the commentator in order to obtain answers in the obstacle course.
No wonder he's UA's top first year. Midori is at the final hurdle now, the fortress. Every now and again, folks, villains' bases can be right under our noses, disguised as the most innocent-looking of buildings. This last obstacle is a simulation of just that. Now, I don't have to tell you that general studies have been seemingly absent so far. Well, that's because they're playing the roles of our bad guys. Due to their normal disadvantage to Class A and B, we've leveled the playing field. If a general studies student can take down one hero course student, they immediately move on to the next round. Ain't that a twist, folks?
Midoriya smiled under his helmet, thinking it's good Nezu took his suggestion to make things more fair for the general studies students, and really ran with it. Then, he stepped through the doors and witnessed many gathered students with a smorgasbord of interesting quirks waiting for him. Midoriya smirked. Time to give himself a real challenge. His claw pack deactivated, conserving its current power level, and entering recharge mode. Each time Midoriya crossed paths with a general studies student, he gently pushed them to one side, using his telekinesis, and simply walked onward. Using new telekinetic abilities he'd been training to use, Midoriya started forming a bubble shield around him that caused projectiles to stop midair, and, if Midoriya felt like it, return to sender. Soon, he reached the final floor, where one student was waiting patiently. The purple-haired teen looked at Midoriya with tired eyes and shook his head and gestured to the exit. Midoriya opened the door and heard him speak up. What? Not gonna thank me? Midoriya kept walking. He wasn't an idiot. Nobody just gives up that easy in a battle and expects a thank you. Whatever this boy's quirk was, it had to be response-related. So yeah, maybe your trick will work on the next student. Midoriya decided to milk this win as he again heard an all-too-familiar noise coming closer. He stood right next to the finish line and waited patiently. Bakugo burst from the building, screaming incoherently as he locked eyes with Midoriya. The explosive teen smiled, seeing that Deku hadn't taken first yet, as he was about to blast himself over the finish line. Midoriya lifted a single finger, causing Bakugo to float, frozen and unable to move, forcing the blonde to watch him cross the finish line. Midoriya chuckled a little inside his helmet. He found it all the sweeter that the whole thing was a camera blind spot, so they could build out tension on who'd get first. Midoriya released Bakugo, who charged over the line, claiming second, but not before jumping at that damn Deku and exploding him to get him back for that, the pitfall trap, and erasing his quirk. Die, you damn Deku! The explosion shook the pair as they collapsed to the floor in a heap. Midoriya let out a pained howl from the smoke as Bakugo jumped from it, grinning with his fist held high in victory. It wasn't easy pulling this off, but Midoriya timed it perfectly. He managed to create a small enough telekinetic barrier to nullify the explosion's damage to his body and vital support gear, but he still took the burn marks and damage to his outfit, later howling out in pain as he used his telekinesis to break his own arms. As the smoke cleared, the injured Midoriya was there, clear as day for all to see, and they'd all witnessed Bakugo attack Midoriya with his explosive quirk because, what? Midoriya had just finished first? Damn, this hurt like hell, but it was so worth it what happened next. He watched in agony as Recovery Girl approached him, examining the damage and having some bots take Midoriya away to a medical station. But the words rang out louder than any explosion Bakugo had. Katsuki Bakugo, for assaulting another competitor outside of an event, you are disqualified from here onward. Shoto Todoroki moves up to second place, Midnight announced. If he weren't on the verge of tears from the horrid pain, Midoriya would be laughing his ass off from the fact he just pulled that off. With a kiss to each arm, Midoriya felt Recovery Girl's quirk kicking in, repairing the damage, although she did surprisingly allow Midoriya to help by snapping some joints back into place using his quirk, after he'd explained that he had the idea to be a doctor if things didn't work out being a hero. Which was sorta true. He did want to be a doctor once, but not anymore. Nonetheless, Midoriya was familiarized with medical knowledge, such as the human skeleton, and Dr. Ujiko's tutoring only furthered that knowledge. Midoriya stepped out onto the field again, healed and ready to go. It seemed like everyone in his squadron had made it through, just as planned. Bakugo didn't even make it to the second event, and he was seen as a savage who attacked another student without provocation and from behind. Truly, revenge had never been so delicious. Now, let's see what this next event is. Inko reached out, spinning the randomizer wheel before it finally landed on an event. Survival. Interesting. Okay, competitors, those of you who placed in the top 42, congratulations. Now, we have a very interesting event for you. One of the many pro heroes here today will be selected by a seat raffle. This includes some UA staff members. Your goal is simple: survive as long as you can, however you can. Please know that you may not attack other competitors in this event. You may attempt to attack the selected hero to impede their attacks, but expect them to hold nothing back. So good luck. The final 16 left standing will advance to the final round. If you're knocked out or sent out of bounds, you are out. Inko yelled into her microphone, clearly geared to be in her hero suit once again, and among her old friends. Sure would have been nice to know she was a dumb hero earlier on in his childhood, Midoriya grumbled to himself quietly. Okay, so from our seat raffle we have seat number 45. A booming laugh echoed through the stadium as a woman who resembled a rabbit slammed down into the field, jumping from her seat. Okay, no need to panic, just need to survive against the current number 6 hero until she's taken out 26 students. What could possibly go wrong? The buzzer sounded, signaling the event to begin. Unsurprisingly, several students thought it'd be a great idea to rush the number 6 hero, Mirko. Meanwhile, those with half a brain used this opportunity to start running for safety or creating defenses. Some students opted to work together. Midoriya supposed there was no harm in doing the same by gathering his Phoenix squad together, but once his team was assembled, an eye fell upon the general studies student from before, the one who'd let him leave the building without a fight. Mirko was about to strike him from behind. Normally, Midoriya would ignore this, but his helmet beeped, showing him the boy's quirk: brainwashing. Midoriya used his telekinesis to pull the boy towards him and out of the way of the attack, patting him on the back with a smug grin beneath his helmet.
What? Not gonna thank me?
Midoriya chuckled as he duplicated himself, creating 3 clones, each digging a hole into the field, and from there, an elaborate tunnel network.
Want to survive into the finals? Follow us.
The boy looked at Midoriya and sighed, jumping into the hole, followed by the rest of Phoenix Squadron. Mineta and the Midoriya clones sealed up the tunnel behind them multiple times using a combination of rocks and sticky balls. Jiro listened closely to the carnage above, listing how many students remained and indicating Mirko's location. Kamakiri, Monoma, and Hagakure all took position to surprise the hero if she managed to breach the defenses. Midoriya and the boy, who now introduced himself as Shinzo, held back to provide support. 26, 23. Why'd she stop? Crap, Mirko is moving for our position. First barrier's down, second down, here she comes! As if on cue, Mirko busted through the rocks and sticky balls, grinning at the teens who showed only minor fear at her presence. Ha! You kids are either the bravest or the dumbest ones I'm gonna fight. Hell, maybe you're both! Everyone stood their ground, holding a combative stance as a floating camera for the audience floated into the cavern Midoriya's clones had carved out. Mirko smirked at it. Now she had an audience, but what happened next she couldn't have predicted. Midoriya nodded at Shinzo, signaling an unspoken plan. Well, bestify with no regrets, right? Mirko grinned and was about to respond to the baggy-eyed teen, but immediately, her eyes glazed over, he pointed upwards, ordering her to head to the surface and flick herself on the head. Doing as she was told, Mirko immediately jumped back to the surface and flicked herself, bringing her back to reality. Then, she looked out into the cavern to see it blocked off again, and this time reinforced with a telekinetic barrier. Admitting defeat against these 7, Mirko left to take out 7 other unlucky teens. The buzzer sounded again, signaling the final 16 were left standing. Midoriya, Shinzo, Kamakiri, Monoma, Mineta, Jiro, Hagakure, Ojiro, Todoroki, Ida, Tokoyami, Hananuki, Shiozaki, Kuroiro, Kodai, and Yaoyorozu. The final event was coming up, but everyone was granted a small break to catch their breath. Time to truly test the combat strength of his squadron. Midoriya knew they were all too eager to figure out their place in the Phoenix Squadron's hierarchy, and this was the chance to show him who deserved to rank above the others. They sat at a table, together discussing that if they met in the ring, if they held back, they'd not only be insulting each other, they'd also be insulting Midoriya and All for One. Midoriya was lecturing Mineta on being a bit less lecherous, since he'd received a fair amount of complaints from not just the girls in his class, but the 2 female members of the squadron too. Telling him if he were to act that way around veteran female villains that'd eventually join the League, they'd try to kill him. And Midoriya assured Mineta that he and Kurogiri couldn't defend the tiny villain all the time. Seemingly scaring him straight for now, Midoriya returned to his meal. And that's our video for the day, so thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Before I go, there's just a little bit of housekeeping I want to go over with you all. First, We the Celestials has many other incredible content for your entertainment and viewing pleasures. All the information you'll need is below in the description, so please check all that out and give some love to the other content. We have a lot going out there, folks. Second, on behalf of We the Celestials, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details are also in the description. Seriously, give some love to the writer and the audio editor and the video editors. They do a lot of work here. I'm not even kidding. But that's been our video for the day, so thank you all for watching and have an amazing day. And as always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and stay awesome. This has been Tim, Mustache out.